Alrighty guys, so we're going to go over the answer key for page 485. This is lesson 5, more two-step equations. For my fourth and my sixth period, we didn't actually finish our notes, so we have to go through this first. For my first and my third period, you can go ahead and skip to the next part of the video so that you can go through the answer key. Okay, so here I have something on the outside that I need to get rid of, and we're actually going to go through it both ways so that you can see both. So I need to rewrite this so that I have more room. T plus 3 times 5/9 is equal to 40. I'm going to leave some room for myself. Okay, when I look at this, I have both a numerator and the denominator. I have 5 in my numerator and 9 in my denominator. Okay, so I need to get rid of my denominator first. Okay, so looking at this denominator, I have divided by, so my fraction means to divide, and divided by 9. To undo it, I need to do the opposite. I need to do the inverse. Okay, so instead of dividing by 9, I'm going to multiply by 9. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other side of my equation. On the left-hand side, I've got 9 in my numerator, 9 in my denominator. This gives me a big 1. Right? And I bring everything else down that's left, right? So I've got t plus 3 in parentheses. I've got a 5. And on the other side, I have 40 times 9, which will give me 360. Okay. Now, so this way, we got rid of the 9. The other way you can do this, you can still get rid of this 5. This is times 5, right? So to undo it, I would divide by 5. Or I can distribute to everything in the parentheses. So I'm going to show that one. Okay. If I do 5 times t, this will give me 5t. When I do 5 times 3, a positive 3, this will give me a positive 15 is equal to 360. Okay. So now I can get rid of things.
Alicia, Walden, please. Wagner, please come to the front office. Alicia, to the front office.
So when I look at this, I've got this positive 15 here, and this is what I need to get rid of first. Okay, so to get rid of the positive 15 or the plus 15, I'm going to subtract it from both sides. 5t plus 15, I'm going to subtract 15 over here. On this side, I've got 360. I'm going to subtract 15 over here. Okay, left-hand side, I've got 15, positive 15 and a negative 15, or plus 15 minus 15. This gives me a big 0. And I bring everything else down. So I've got 5t right here. On this side, and on the other side, I've got 345. Okay. This operation right here, this 5t, to undo it, so this was 5 times t, I'm going to undo it by dividing by 5 on both sides, right? So we're undoing everything by doing the opposite. 5 over 5 will give me a big 1, and I'm left with t is equal to 69. Okay, so make sure you have those in your notebooks. Okay, so let's go to our homework. All right, so I'm going to show both methods, and this is going to be a long video. Just skip to the parts that you need the way you want to do it. All right, so I'm going to skip number 1. You can check your answers in the back, and I'm going to go straight to number 2. I'm going to do number 4, and I'll see maybe 24 and 25. Okay, so number 2, right? So if I start with number 2, I'm going to start with the distributing side. So here's number 2, and I've got negative 7 times the quantity of z minus 6 is equal to negative 70. Okay, so here I'm distributing. I'm going to distribute the negative 7 to the z, distribute the negative 7 to the negative 6. So negative 7 times z is a negative 7z. Negative 7 times a negative 6 will give me a positive 42. Right, and on this side, I bring down the negative 70. So to get rid of my positive 42, I do the opposite. So I have negative 7z plus 42, and I subtract 42, doing the opposite. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Negative 70 minus 42. Okay. On the left-hand side, I've got positive 42. I've got negative 42. This will give me a big 0. right? And I am left with negative 7z on this side. On the right-hand side, I've got negative 70 and a negative 42. This will give me a negative 112. Okay, so to undo this one, I've got negative 7 times z. To do the opposite, I need to divide both sides by a negative 7. On the left-hand side, I've got negative 7 in my numerator, negative 7 in my denominator. This gives me a big 1. And on the right-hand side, I've got, so this leaves me with z. On the right-hand side, I've got negative 112 divided by a negative 7, which will give me a positive 16. Okay, so if we were to do the same thing for number 2, right? And instead, we're going to undo the distributive property. We're going to get rid of it first. So I have the same problem is equal to negative 7. For your homework, you just need to choose one method and do it, okay? Or you can alternate, whichever one's easier. So on this side, I've got negative 7. This is negative 7 times the quantity of z minus 6. So if I want to get rid of that first, I'm going to immediately divide by negative 7. I really like this method because it gives me smaller numbers, okay? Left-hand side, I've got negative 7 in my numerator and negative 7 in my denominator. That gives me a big 1. Okay, so bringing everything down, this leaves me with z minus 6 is equal to 10. Smaller numbers, right? Way smaller numbers than the other side. And I feel like less mistakes will happen when you have that. Okay, so on this side, I now have z minus 6. To get rid of this minus 6, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So z minus 6 plus 6. Other side, I've got 10 plus 6. Left-hand side, I've got negative 6, positive 6. This will give me a big 0. This leaves me with z on one side and 16 on the other, right? So you can kind of see which one's a little bit easier, but both methods work, okay? So let's go to number 4. Number 4, it is 8/11 times the quantity of n minus 10 is equal to 64. Okay, by the way, 6th period, your guys' reward was to skip a problem, and there was one of your classmates who asked to skip number 24, so I'm okay with that. You can skip number 24 for your homework. Okay, so this problem has 2 parts, right? I've got a numerator in the top. I've got a denominator on the bottom. I have to get rid of both of those, or in this case, I'm going to distribute both of those. So this is how it gets a little bit more difficult, right? So if I were to distribute, you guys might want to do the other method. If I were to distribute, I've got 8/11 times n, so this is 8/11 times n. And I've got 8/11 times a negative 10, which will give me a negative 80/11. Right? This will equal 64. To get rid of this negative 80/11, I have to add 80/11 on both sides. 8/11 n minus 80/11 plus 80/11 is equal to 64 plus 80/11, right? And now we have to find the least common denominator, right? So I would actually recommend to go to the other method, right? Here I've got negative 80/11, positive 80/11, and that will give me a big 0. And I bring down my 8/11 n is equal to something on the other side. Give me a second. All right, so 64, if I were to have a denominator of 11, would be 704/11, right? So just multiplying it by 11. Then I would add the 80/11. I haven't even done that yet. All right. So when I add those together, I have 8/11 n is equal to 784/11. Right. So one thing I can see is I have a denominator of 11 over here and a denominator of 11 over here. This will be easily removed, right? So this is dividing by 11. So to get rid of it, I multiply it by 11 both sides. Now I've got a big 1 over here. I've got a big 1 over here. Right. So what leaves me with 8n is equal to 784. All right, so to get rid of this, I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides because this was 8 times n, so I do the opposite. Here's my big 1, and 784 divided by 8 will give me an answer of n equals 98. I do not have enough room. I'm supposed to line up my equal signs, but I'm out of page. Okay? So that was that crazy way. Right? If I were to undo it, so here's my problem. Number 4, 8 11ths times the quantity of n minus 10 is equal to 64, right? So getting rid of my number right here first, right? This side right here, this is dividing by 11, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 11, right? Left-hand side, I've got a big 1, and this will leave me with 8 times the quantity of n minus 10 is equal to 64 times 11, which is 704. Okay, so there's my number again. Now seeing this right here is 8 times all of this, so to undo it, I divide. On this side, 8 in my numerator, 8 in my denominator, this gives me a big 1, and I can only simplify that because it's multiplying right here. On the right-hand side, 704 divided by 8 will give me 88, and I am left with n minus 10 right here. So now, to get rid of this minus 10, I'm going to add 10 on both sides. n minus 10 plus 10. Same thing on the other side. 88 plus 10. Okay. Left-hand side, I get this big 0, and that will leave me with n is equal to 98. Right, so you can choose which one you want. I prefer to get rid of my denominators so that I don't have to deal with least common denominators or anything like that. Okay? Let's skip to the next problem. Okay, so this is number 24. In 6th period, you don't have to do this, but I would actually listen at least to understand how to do this problem. Okay, so a rectangular classroom is 32 feet long and has a perimeter of 120 feet. Right, 32 feet long and perimeter of 120 feet. And you guys remember when you run the perimeter for PE, you run around the backstop, around second level, around the other backstop, around all the blacktops, and all the way back, right? So it's around everything. Okay, so to find the perimeter, you're finding the distance around all of it. So it says label the drawing with the correct values to represent the situation. Let W represent the width of the classroom. So if we look at this, right, we can already fill it in. Perimeter of the rectangle is 120 feet, right? So there's my 120. I've got the length of 32 feet long. And if this top side is 32, that means the bottom is 32 because opposite sides are congruent. They're the same. And it says let W represent the width. So that means we don't know what this one is right here. Okay. It says write an expression that represents the sum. What does sum mean? Sum means you're in answer to an addition problem. So when we add all of them to, or the sum of the length and the width, right? So here's my length, 32. Here's my width, W. I don't know what that is. Then it says write an expression that represents twice the sum of the length of the width and the width, right? So that means I'm multiplying it by 2 times 32 plus W. Okay. Then it says to write an equation you can use to find the perimeter of the classroom. So we're taking all those sides, right? And the perimeter is going to be 120. So I have this equation, 2 times the quantity of 32 plus W is equal to 120, right? And then you can solve that equation to find your width. Your width should be 28 feet. I need to see the work for this one, you guys. Okay, so if you don't have work, I'm not getting you credit for this. The last one, 25, you do need to do number 11 on your own. Number 25, there is something wrong in the answer key. So the answer key tells you to add Q to both sides and to divide both sides by P. But to solve this efficiently, you cannot add Q to both sides. That's not an option. Okay, so I'm not sure why the answer key said that. Your only option should be that one. That being said, you can do whatever you want to both sides as long as you do it to both sides, or you keep it equal.